Okay.
I got a 7.
I got a 17. Welcome to the Click Clack Shack. Today we are talking about why armor class makes no sense. So, before we start talking about why we think armor class doesn't make sense, we want to recognize that we know why armor class is set up the way that it is.
5e in of itself is supposed to be a very rules-light system where it's basically what you need.
Yeah, bare minimum rules, like simpler mechanics, right? So, AC functions the way it's intended, right? It basically tells you whether you have to subtract a number from your hit points or not.
But AC as it is, where it is basically you get hit or you don't, makes no sense for what it is.
Yeah, like compared to what it's supposed to represent in the physical world, which I guess is also something we should acknowledge, that we know D&D is not necessarily supposed to closely represent the physical world, because we could get into a whole rabbit hole of like hit points and why that system doesn't actually make physical sense.
Yeah, you get hit by an axe once, maybe twice, you're dead in
Yeah.
IRL. But AC as it exists in the system of whether or not you get hit or not doesn't make too much sense in the context of D&D.
Yeah, because there's a lot of things that increase your AC, like putting on heavy armor, that actually don't make you get hit any less. In fact, if you put on heavy armor, you're probably slower and you're probably actually going to get hit more often.
As it is, there are two opposing ways to increase your AC. It's either pumping your dex and wearing lighter armor, or pumping your strength to the point where you could wear heavier armor, where essentially one would make it so it's harder for you to get hit but take more damage, whereas the other is easier for you to get hit but take less damage.
So, because of those two separate ways to increase your AC, we think there should actually be two separate mechanics that determine whether or not you take damage. An evasion rating that functions more like AC does now, and then an armor class that would determine how much damage you actually take. So, the first part of this is something that's more like what AC is currently trying to represent, which is how hard you are to hit. But to me, that sounds more like an evasion rating.
Where our theory for an evasion rating is, for example, 15 plus dex, where it would remain somewhat the same as what we recognize AC as right now. With our theory, medium armor and heavy armor would give a penalty to that, as it does slow you down a little bit. So it should be noted that we really don't have this mechanic fleshed out, where you may be thinking, hey, what about lizard folk? They have 13 plus dex with their AC. It's not fair to them. We recognize that, and frankly, we don't have this fully put together. And if we come to a full thought process on this, we would address that. But as of right now, we don't have that.
Yeah, this is just an idea of how a mechanic might work. So don't add us.
Please don't.
So with this mechanic, with evasion functioning how AC kind of functions right now, when you're attacking, you would make an attack roll against the evasion rating to see if you actually hit the creature, which would then bring us to our next point about what armor class actually should mean.
In this situation, armor class would now determine how much armor you have and how much damage is actually taken at the end of being hit.
Yeah, because essentially if you're wearing armor, again, that doesn't make you harder to hit. It just means that if you do get hit, you're going to take less damage from that hit. So we think armor class, or what armor you're wearing, should actually determine a reduction in your damage rather than whether or not you take any damage at all.
This mechanic is somewhat similar to, if you've ever played Star Wars Edge of the Empire, there's the soak rating, and if you've ever played the module of Descent into Avernus, there is the damage threshold of the Infernal War Machines, which it would be kind of similar to this, where it reduces it. There's an amount of damage that needs to be done for it to actually do damage.
Yeah, and again, referencing our earlier comment about this not being completely fleshed out, we're not sure if this should function more like a soak or more like a damage threshold. It would have to probably scale somehow with level rather than being a flat amount of damage reduction. Again, there's lots of things that need to be fleshed out with this.
We didn't playtest any of this.
No, we didn't playtest this at all. But essentially, wearing heavier armor would reduce your damage by more, whereas wearing light armor would reduce your damage by a smaller amount.
With this mechanic, we kind of intend for a different approach on how to play the game for everyone involved, as it allows for much more versatility in how you play.
Yeah, having different mechanics for the two different ways to reduce the damage you take can give you more options for how you build your character. So, do you want to be really hard to hit and pump your dex, but then take more damage when you do get hit? Or do you want to not really give a crap whether or not you get hit because you're wearing heavy armor and it'll reduce all your damage? It gives you multiple different ways to approach how you reduce your damage, which, again, the AC system currently kind of does that because there are multiple ways to increase your AC, but having different mechanics better represents these different ways of approaching your character.
To reiterate on this, we have done, unfortunately, minimal design. We recognize that there isn't much play tested on this. We're currently looking into it how we can, and we look forward to letting you guys know what we come up with that works, and hopefully we can play test it.
Yeah, I think it'd be cool to play test it because, you know, that's kind of the flip side of the coin, right? Like, because it gives you more ways to build your character, it does completely change how other mechanics in the game work, like rolling to hit, amount of HP that you have, and all of that.
I personally look forward to doing the heavy armor way, where it's easy for you to get hit, but you ain't got no time to bleed.
Thanks for visiting the Click Clack Shack today. We hope you come back soon. We try to put up a new video every couple of weeks, so make sure you click that subscribe button so you'll always know when we put up our next video. Also, follow us on Twitter at Click Clack Shack and let us know what you want us to talk about next. And until then, may all your hits be crits.